Hi, everyone. I'm here with Amanda Hunt, and we are doing a series with cancer awareness, talking to different cancer patients and survivors. And I'm here with Amanda, and we're going to talk about melanoma and bring some awareness to that. And I just want to start off with asking you, how did you find out you were diagnosed with that you had cancer before you were even diagnosed? Like, what made you think something was wrong with your body?
Honestly, at the time, I didn't feel like anything was wrong. I didn't feel sick necessarily. I had been experiencing like some female hormone problems. I had really bad anxiety kind of out of nowhere. Some things like that were happening, but I had just attributed them to life, right? Like my job, whatever. But how I truly found out was I accidentally found a lump in my right breast. Um, I did have a history of cystic breasts, so that wasn't like uncommon to find something. Um, and I regularly went and got mammograms and ultrasounds just to stay on top of those. But this one was new because I had been within the last 6 months. Um, I wasn't super worried about it, but I still went and got it checked out. And they ended up removing it surgically in the office, and that came back as melanoma.
Wow. So it started off as like a lump in your breast, something that
Right.
most people would think was potentially breast cancer, and it ended up being melanoma. So they did a biopsy, I'm guessing, of that. And so tell us, when you were sat down, like how were you told by your doctor, primary care doctor, about your diagnosis?
Well, the person that did the biopsy was just a general surgeon. He had done previous ones on cysts, and I didn't have like a great working relationship with him. We weren't super close. I maybe had seen him 3 times in my whole life. I have a really good friend who is a PA locally, and she actually was able to get the results before the surgeon did. And so one of my best friends actually called me and gave me the news.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So when you got the news, what was your next step? Were you overwhelmed? Because I know a lot of people in the healthcare, when they get thrown into the healthcare system, they tend to get very overwhelmed, especially when it comes to a diagnosis like this.
Yeah. Um, I was overwhelmed just from the diagnosis alone, not so much the process of what happens after that. I got the call on like a Friday, like right before 5 p.m., that I had cancer. And honestly, like I didn't really understand what it meant. Like I was still confused that entire weekend about like, do I have breast cancer? Like what is this? Like, and of course, what do we all turn to, which we shouldn't, is the internet, right? So
Yeah.
I spend the whole weekend like Googling, and like that just made me feel worse. I was just extremely confused. And it took a couple of weeks to really wrap my mind around like what that truly meant.
So I'm going to bring up a picture here, and I just
Yeah.
kind of want you to take me back. We kind of briefly touched on this right before we came on, but you said this is what, around your 30th birthday?
Yep, that's my friend and I. We were in Orlando celebrating my 30th birthday. As you can see, I'm extremely tan there. Um, Not normally tan, very pale skinned. Just hanging out in the sun, not a care in the world.
So when you were tan like this, did you do anything like back in the day, I'm just going to bring it up. Um, Everybody in high school used baby oil
Mhm.
to go tan. Was that something that you did? Like, how did you get so tan in those pictures?
I was going to the tanning bed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, I was born and raised in Florida. So I grew up going to like Playa Linda Beach, and I was so fair skinned. None of my friends were. I always got burned every summer. I do remember putting on sunblock as a child, but I don't really recall the reapplication part, which is so
Right.
important, and people don't do that. So I definitely got burned a lot as a child, which increases your chances of skin cancer also. But then as I got older, I started using tanning beds when I was about 19, and I was still using them up until my early 30s.
So was the tanning bed something that you thought of on your own, or was it a friend that was like, hey, come tanning with me one day?
It was actually a boyfriend
Okay.
at the time that was like, oh, you're kind of pale. Why don't we get you in the tanning bed? Yeah. So that's how that started.
So I wonder what they don't talk about with tanning beds as far as people continuously going in. I know people do it like 5-6 days a week,
Yeah.
and they go in there, and I don't think they think of these potential consequences of going in there and continuously, tanning your body. And they don't have a protective lotion, do they, for those? I don't know much about the tanning bed, so I don't know.
So, like you have to fill out paperwork saying that you recognize the risks and you're proceeding anyway. They have it plastered on the walls, but I know for me, it was always one of those things like, well, it won't happen to me, right? It won't. And then I also, in the back of my mind, I went to a dermatologist every year to get skin checks. And I always thought, well, I go frequently. If something pops up, right, that's of concern, we'll find it early. They'll do what they have to do to get rid of it, and then that'll be it. So it was kind of like a crutch in the back of my mind. But as our conversation develops, you'll hear that my situation's a little unique. And so that didn't really save me from this.
So I know a lot of people, we'll go back to your diagnosis. A lot of people, when they think of melanoma, they think that people usually find a mark on them. Do you know anything more about that? Like what they know, it's like a mole that they find.
Yeah.
That's one potential way of learning that they have it.
Right. Typically, someone finds out they have skin cancer because there is a skin primary, meaning there's like a mole or there's something on their body that either suddenly appears or it starts changing. Sometimes it can itch or bleed, something to that effect. And typically that signals to you that something's wrong and you're supposed to go to a dermatologist and get it checked out. In my case, I had a spot appear on my arm. I think it was like 2011. It ended up being basal cell carcinoma. So I had like a surgical procedure. It's called the Mohs procedure, where they cut it out in the office. They make sure the margins are clear, and then that's kind of it. But because of that, that's why I started going every year for my annual skin checks, just in case, right? So 10 years later, I find this lump in my breast and I'm like, what in the world? Like I've been going every year and I quit doing tanning beds. So in my case though, I still to this day have never had a skin primary of melanoma. So I never had that mole or that spot that would signal a threat, which is why when I found out I was already stage 4.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the first spot, can you explain, was it raised or what did it look like, an aging spot? There's so many different.
Yeah. So the basal cell to me resembled a mosquito bite. I actually caught it like getting out of the shower, like a reflection in the mirror.
Okay.
And it was just pink and it didn't go away. And then it started appearing like very flaky and it would start to bleed a little bit.
Okay. All right. That's thank you for that definition. I'm sure that a lot of people that are tuning in and watching this are probably intrigued. If they're trying to bring awareness, I want them to get a better idea of to be checking out their skin and looking out for this, because we know that early detection saves lives. So let's go back to, you said you were stage 4 when when they finally like diagnosed you. So what were treatments like for you? Like, where did it all start? Kind of take us to your treatments and even your scans. Like, I know that for me, when I went in, I started with getting a CT scan, then a PET scan. And we figured out our treatment plan after that. So how was it for you?
Yeah. So obviously when they discovered that I had a melanoma tumor inside of my breast, not on the surface of it, but inside, it's already metastasized. It's already spread. So at this point, we're like, where else is it, right? So because of the urgency, because melanoma is the most deadliest form of skin cancer, I locally had scans done, CT scans, and it did reveal metastasis to both lungs, And I want to say that's kind of all it reported. It may have reported a few other things, but it was just done, by someone local that is not staring at cancer tumors all day, every day.
Right.
So by the time I figured out where I wanted to go for treatment, because of the severity of what I was dealing with, like I chose Moffitt. They were actually my second opinion, but Moffitt is an amazing cancer and research center, and I'm so thankful that I chose to go there. So we went with Moffitt, and so of course they want to do their own staging. So they do their own set of scans, and at this point I had not had a brain MRI, and melanoma likes to travel to the brain, the lungs, and the liver. Those are the most common locations. So at that point, when I show up at Moffitt, they're basically telling me, hey, you could have tumors in your brain right now, and there's a great possibility that you do. So I was terrified. Thank God I didn't, and I still haven't to this day. So they kind of did a restaging, and they did updated scans. And I was already like struggling and like trying to process it all. But that day was like really a gut punch, because there were so many more tumors throughout my body than we knew when we arrived, that they were able to locate on the scans. So in addition to my lungs, there was a tumor on my left kidney, one of my adrenal glands. I had, oddly, which is very rare, I had a tumor behind each eye, in the orbit of each eye. And because melanoma is a skin cancer, it likes to form tumors like just under the skin and the subcutaneous tissue. And there were just like uncountable tumors just throughout the subcutaneous tissue of my body, like the torso region.
Could you feel it?
Well, at this point, no, but things started progressing very quickly. Like within a couple of weeks of getting that diagnosis phone call, I started getting palpable tumors that were just like popping up. It was moving really fast. I had one that had formed on the left side of my neck. I had two that were on my back. And you could see them because melanoma cells are dark. They're basically black. And these tumors form just under the surface of the skin. And I'm so pale that they would look like bruises. And then you could actually like see them and touch them. And it was very eerie, if I'm being honest, because a lot of times when people have cancer, it's internal, right? And you may know that you have a tumor somewhere in your abdomen, but you can't really see it. You can't feel it. It's so creepy when you can look in the mirror and see tumors on your body, or you can feel them. It was just a very uneasy.
I can imagine being able to see them. Like you said, a lot of us that go through it, we can't see what's going on unless you look at the scan. And even then, that I have no idea what I'm looking at when they show me a scan. And I'm like, I don't know, is that my lungs, my liver? I don't know what that is. And you tell me, So, oh my gosh. So what was your treatment like? Are you still going through treatments right now?
I am.
Okay.
Yes, I'm still very much in treatment. So we started out, they kind of always offer, when you're advanced, like I was, there's always a clinical trial that's available. So we talked about those. And I wasn't, we don't know what we're doing. I'm like, I don't know. Do I do this trial? Do I do this thing that like you have a little bit of research to back it up? It's like you don't want to make the wrong decision. It's really difficult position to be in. So I just prayed about it, honestly. And I'm like, and I felt uneasy about going through with the trial. So I took that as my sign to know I'm going to just proceed with the immunotherapy. It was just a single medication immunotherapy, which we did. And I'm glad I did, because I responded really well to this treatment. And immunotherapy is very different. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it still. It's different than chemo and the more traditional cancer treatments. But for those that don't know, immunotherapy is still a medication. I get infusions through an IV. I don't have a port or PICC line. I kind of wish I did at this point, because I've been stuck so many times. But so I get it intravenously, and it's a medication that essentially like revs up my own immune system. Because sometimes they say like through environmental reasons, whatever, our immune system becomes suppressed, weakened, whatever, and it's not functioning in the way it's designed, right? So Cancer can evade it. It can trick it. It doesn't even recognize that, there's cancer growing in your body. So this medication wakes up my own immune system, which is awesome. But when you take the brakes off your immune system, it can harm you and it can literally kill you, right? Like our body naturally knows when to turn it off so that it doesn't kill us. So in my case, I've had several instances where my immune system has attacked healthy cells.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the downfall. Like people look at me and they'll say, well, you don't really look sick, or you haven't lost your hair, right? Because I'm not going through chemo. But there's very much a war going on inside my body 24/7. My body, trying to save me. So I started the immunotherapy and responded pretty quickly. I mean, tumors started disappearing, shrinking, becoming stable. And I had a really, really good response to it in the beginning. I started treatment July of 2020, so last year. And in March of 2021, just out of nowhere, I showed up for my infusion, and my blood work, my fasting glucose was like insane. And my A1C was like 9 point something, and I had lost 10 pounds in 1 week. My immune system had attacked my pancreas, and now I am permanently insulin dependent type 1 diabetic.
Wow.
So that's an example of how dangerous it can be when you're not regulating the immune system.
Oh my gosh. So like, do you have any, do you hear my fan at all on my computer? For some reason, it's like going hard.
Not bad.
Do you have any side effects that you're dealing with doing the immunotherapy?
Yeah, so the type 1 diabetes is a permanent one, right? Like right now I don't have an insulin pump yet because I'm still like transitioning, but I do like 6 insulin shots a day right now. And they say it's going to be permanent, but that's just going to be the way that it is. I developed was it the end of June? I think it was the end of June of this year. I got really sick, like out of nowhere. I ended up with immune mediated meningitis, which basically was I had like a ridiculously dangerous amount of immune cells build up in my spinal fluid from the immunotherapy. And so I was admitted to Moffitt for a week. I had to get a spinal tap. I had to go through like so much. And they ended up treating it with steroids, thankfully. That suppresses your immune system, which is kind of like the go-to anytime you have a side effect. But what sucks about it is it's completely counterproductive to my cancer treatment, right? Like I don't want to suppress my immune system. I want it to be awake and kill cancer. So it's like, even though there's this remedy, to kind of help you with the side effect, it's scary because then you're not on treatment during that time. And it's suppressing your immune system, which you're relying on to find and kill this cancer. So it's kind of like a weird dynamic there.
Yeah.
And so the meningitis was the second thing that happened. And right now I'm going through, they're not really labeling it hepatitis, although I guess it could kind of be chemically induced. Just out of nowhere, my liver enzymes are like quadruple normal numbers. And so I'm back on steroids. So the cheeks are starting to fill up again.
Yeah, I went through that with the steroids. I was up at 3:00 in the morning when they had me on steroids. I literally went out and bought a whole pumpkin pie to myself. I ate that whole pumpkin pie.
If I didn't have diabetes, I'd totally do it.
It made me so hungry. I was like, oh, I got to eat. I was up at like 3 a.m. eating a whole pumpkin pie to myself. I'll never forget that. That is not me. I don't even like, I don't like sweets. I'm more of like a chip person. And so having that pumpkin pie was next level. I do have a question from Sherry. She wants to know, did you have autoimmune issues prior to your diagnosis?
I did not. No, not at least not that I know of. And typically it's my understanding that people that have autoimmune issues going into cancer treatment don't usually respond very well to the immunotherapy, or sometimes it's too dangerous to even consider. But no, I did not.
Yeah, I know that there's so many new medical breakthroughs, and so that does give hope. I many years ago they didn't have these options, so
No. Yeah.
at least we people are living longer. I know my dad had multiple myeloma, and that was a very short-lived cancer, and they're living up to 20 years now,
Yeah.
and that was unheard of. So anyway, through your diagnosis and going through these treatments, and you're still currently going through treatments, you became passionate about becoming an advocate and bringing awareness to melanoma,
Yeah.
and especially living in the state of Florida. And I just want to bring up that Florida ranks second in the nation for the highest rate of new melanoma cases. I have some maps that I pulled up. Here is Brevard County, where we live, in the black. And you'll see this is the data from the cancer data system in the state of Florida. And it shows there's 6,794 cases statewide. And in Brevard County, there's 287. These numbers are staggering. So I'll do the statewide numbers. This, again, 6,794. You'll see that they have lots of statistics on there. It's a really good website to look up cancer data. Approximately 1 in 10 Floridians have been told that they have skin cancer. And then to go into some more information, the most hazardous for UF exposure generally is from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. I want to go into your advocacy work and what kind of awareness are you trying to bring to melanoma? Like, what do you want people that are tuning in and having this conversation with us to know?
Probably first and foremost that it's not just skin cancer, right? Like, you can die from skin cancer, and people die from it every single day. I don't think people recognize how dangerous it is and how preventable it really is in most cases. I mean, there are some forms that are not caused by the sun. We won't go there right now, but the majority are. So I would say that's first and foremost, just recognizing that it is a danger, and we live in Florida. I mean, even just mowing your grass or, walking in a parking lot to go into Target, checking your mail, like all of these things, you're still being exposed to the sun. When it's cloudy outside, you're still being exposed to the sun. So every day now, before I leave my house, I ask Alexa what the UV index is, right? It gives you like a range, and you can kind of gauge like, okay, like how serious is it? Am I coming out of the house like a tourist today, or can I like maybe wear a tank top? So I think that's really, really important. And then to piggyback off of that is the use of sunblock. I mean, truly, we should be using it all the time. Like for my daughter, I've now been incorporating it into her makeup routine. I'm like, you put this on your face every day, even if you don't think you're going anywhere, even if you don't think you're leaving the house. Have some, sunblock in your makeup, something for your face, your shoulders, your arms. Even when you're riding in your car, you have a sunroof open, hang your car or your arm out the window. Like all of these areas are being exposed to the sun. And tanned skin is not healthy skin. I don't care how you got it there. It is a response to your skin cells being damaged. And I never considered that, right? Like I just wanted to be tan. I wasn't naturally tan. I thought that tan skin was more attractive. I was young, so, I was making these reckless decisions, not considering like the future. So for me, it's just bringing that awareness of how dangerous it is, that it is preventable, right? And the ways in which you can do that. Sunblock, I wear like UV shirts now. You can wear hats. Even sunglasses are important. You can get melanoma of the eye, which is very rare, but it's deadly and dangerous too. So making sure that you're covering up. And then also, I had no clue that you could have melanoma and it not appear on your skin. And I'm pretty sure that nobody else knows either, right? So I think it's just important to know that there are rare instances, and it's just another reminder of why it's so important and to stay in tune with your body. make sure you're getting annual skin checks. Even if you've never gone to a tanning bed, even if you don't go to the beach a lot, you live in Florida, you should be going at least once a year. And you should be paying attention to your own body. If you have a mole somewhere, check it out. Like, just see if it's changing, write it down. So I think it's just the awareness, because I was so caught off guard, and I don't want anyone else to go through what I've gone through.
Yeah.
For sure.
You're going to have everyone after this going in their mirrors and looking all over their skin. Like, they're going to be really analyzing themselves.
I know. Well, I actually get messages, and it's been really cool because my story kind of went national, like out of nowhere. And so I get messages from people like all over the world saying like, oh my God, thank you. Like, I've now gone because of you, or they caught this early because of you. So it's been really cool. And even if I just help one person, like, that's fine.
It's so worth it. I'm going to go back to the sunscreen really quick, because I know that there's a lot of people that follow us that worry about chemicals, because Fight for Zero,
Yes.
for zero chemicals. But I have to bring this up, that there are sunscreens out there, and this is a box that EWG, if you guys do not know, the Environmental Working Group, they're really, really well known on a national level, sent me a box of chemical-free sunscreens that still protect you. And there's so many different options out there now that don't damage the reefs, that still protect you. And as Amanda said, I have made it a part of my routine on a daily basis underneath my makeup, on my arms. I put it on like it's skin lotion.
Yeah.
And like you said, reapplying it. So I like these little bottles, and I put them in my purse. I'm very serious about my protection, as well as being a ginger. And I do use coffee. There's a way you can use coffee, and sometimes I'll do that to tan my skin. But I don't use the tanning beds or go out in the sun to say, I do the fake, style tanner.
Yeah.
But there are chemical-free lotions out there. So there's lots of options. EWG, go to their website. They are an amazing resource. You can find all kinds of products, and they rate them, and they tell you what chemicals are in them and what they do. And I don't know if they still have this box of samples that you could purchase to try it out, but that's one thing. I also want to bring up a couple other things. So here's another word advice. Seek shade as much as possible. Water and sand reflect damaging rays of the sun, which can increase your chance of getting a sunburn. A lot of people may not know, because we live here on the beautiful coast of Florida, and in the state of Florida, where everybody goes to the beach, and that's where we're getting a lot of our really damaging exposure.
Yeah.
So let's see. So there's another way to protect yourself, and this is something that I wish I would have started younger. I know you talk about that, Amanda, and I feel like we all were kind of reckless in our young age. If I would have known they made sun protective clothing, I would have been wearing that at a sooner date. You know what I mean? And so now I invest in the UV long sleeve. People look at me crazy that are out of town, like, why are you wearing long sleeves in Florida? I'm protecting myself from the sun.
Yeah.
So they do have the UV. I've been slowly investing in that because I'm out on the water all the time. I used to be a surfer, an avid surfer in high school, and I didn't wear this kind of clothing.
Yeah.
Although I did put on lotion. We already went over sunscreen. I put down a couple notes here. Also, be even more cautious if you are taking medications that may make you more sensitive to the sun. I know that there's some medications that I was on during my treatment that actually would make it 10 times worse. That would make me get sunburn extremely fast, especially like chemotherapy and things like that. So I do want to talk about your apparel. You're wearing it right now. It looks awesome. I'm going to put the link up here, and just tell us a little bit about that and how you came about to creating that.
Okay. So as I mentioned before, that first weekend after the diagnosis, I started like turning to Dr. Google, and I was like desperately just trying to find someone similarly situated as me, right? Like I was looking for hope, because when you start reading those statistics, there is no hope. They are stealing your hope and all of that. So I was just desperately looking for someone who had gone through what I had gone through and was still alive, and, you know, had some words of wisdom and hope for me. And so I couldn't find it anywhere. So at that point, I decided I'm doing it, not only for my own healing, like I'm going to document my journey and I'm going to work on my own healing through this, but then hopefully someone else in the future will stumble upon my blog and they will find hope there, because I try to fill it with nothing but love and hope. And so I started writing blogs, and I just one day signed off love and sunblock. I don't know why, I just did. And I was like, well, that's kind of cute, you know?
It is.
So then I started doing it over and over. And then I was like, well, let me just make some like merch. So I hopped on Bonfire and like dabbled around with all of their stuff. And so like created this little emblem, and I'm like, oh, I kind of like it. And I sold like 300 and something like shirts and sweatshirts and stickers, and like it kind of took off. It was pretty cool. It's actually being trademarked at the moment too.
So
But yeah, so I don't know. It's kind of like the silver lining for me. Like my takeaway from all of this is like, life is short, right? Love, just lead with love, and don't forget your sunblock.
oh my gosh, I love how you came up with that. And
Yeah,
I think it is amazing because when you go through something like this, it makes you fearless to some degree, because
yeah,
before I felt like a lot was holding me back, and then I was diagnosed and I'm like, oh my gosh, like we're never guaranteed tomorrow. What am I doing? You know what I mean?
right.
And now I take so many more risks and I put myself out there so much more. And I would have never done that before cancer. And I'm always, as crazy as it sounds, I'm grateful that I went through it, even though it's a traumatizing experience and nobody should ever have to go through it. I just feel like we wouldn't be given this journey if we couldn't handle it, and we didn't have a purpose with it. And you're creating a purpose out of your story. And I just commend you for bringing awareness, for putting yourself out there, because I know it's not easy.
Yeah, I'm typically a very private person, right? And like I really struggled with that in the beginning, but I had to. It's not about me. It's really not. So I just take myself out of the equation, and I'm just providing information in hopes that someone will take it and learn from it. Um, and so that's just where I'm at with it right now.
So we're coming to an end here. We had some amazing comments. Somebody said they were going to mention medications. They love your love and sunblock.
Aw, thank you.
Sunglasses for all the kiddos. We definitely have to protect them. They're in the vulnerable population when it comes to all of this prevention stuff. We really got to take care of our children when it comes to the sun exposure, when it comes to chemical exposure, the drinking water they have. They're in their growth stages, and so they are very vulnerable to all of this. Is there anything you would like to leave, like like just last minute remarks, something, to those that are watching this, that will be replaying this, that are just learning about melanoma, maybe some words of wisdom, somebody that's going through melanoma?
Yeah, so I'd say the big takeaway, at least for me in this, is not very specific to melanoma. It's just to life in general. But I think it's so important that I don't want to leave without mentioning it. And that is that time is so incredibly precious, right? And none of us truly ever know, like how long we have here. And although I'm battling cancer, I'm not technically dying any faster than anybody else, right? In fact, I kind of look at it as a blessing, because I have this different perspective on life where I'm not wasting my time. I'm trying to get things right, like I'm not considering like, oh, one day I'll do that thing, or, it's just you look at life differently, and it's truly been a blessing. And I'm really, really, really grateful for that. And I just encourage everyone else to kind of try to hone in on that and learn that from others, because you don't want to wait until you're facing like a life-threatening illness to get it right. you don't want to leave with unfinished business and, and leave behind your children and not be prepared for anything. It's really scary to consider. So I just encourage everybody to really recognize that time is precious, and you don't have to have cancer to have that perspective in life.
Oh my gosh, I think that is the perfect closeout to this discussion, especially with what's going on in our world today, the last few years with this, our health, issues that we're seeing, and so many people have lost people, and what an amazing message to leave behind. And Amanda, thank you so much for just coming on here and telling your story, putting yourself out there, and bringing awareness to this really serious issue, especially here in the Sunshine State. And you guys, we will be back with this series very shortly. Thank you guys for tuning in.